I am driven by a need to create and explore, but overwhelmingly, I feel the need to memorialise the site where I grew up. I embarked upon a journey investigating the site of Kings Norton, particularly Primrose, Pool Farm, and Hawksley Estates, as named in the 2005 Kings Norton Three Estates Development Study. I began by visiting the local library, gathering knowledge of how the landscape has evolved and its long history of frequent changeover and division of estates. Kings Norton is constantly evolving, and with the UK under the pressure of the housing crisis, it is a great investment opportunity for developers. Here we can see the most recent development project with Primrose Park being opened by Birmingham City
I'm really
Council.
proud to open Primrose Park here in Kings Norton. It is part of a major housing regeneration project and is great news for the local community. Public open green spaces are vital for the environment and people's well-being.
With that mention of the importance of green spaces, we shall continue our journey into the three estates, where we begin to encounter a stark blend of waste and nature. The landscape here adheres to characteristics celebrated by Paul Farley and Michael Simmons Roberts in their 2012 non-fiction publication, Edgelands: A Journey into the Wilderness, in which they explore the fringes of English towns and cities, where urban and rural negotiate and renegotiate their borders, those places where overspill housing estates break into scrubland, wasteland. Farley and Simmons, page 5. In the case of the three estates, on one of these borders sits the Fields Millennium Green, an area of public space within the three estate site. At the height of the park sits a large steel primrose, a work of public art commemorating the millennium, made by fabricator Tim Tolkien. Another of his works, Sentinel, locally known as Spitfire Island, was commissioned through a Birmingham City Council arts initiative in support of the regeneration of Castle Vale. It provides a strong example of public art being used to memorialise the history of a site amidst the destruction and reconstruction of regeneration. In an article titled The Roundabout Artist, the White Pube offers reflections on neglected wastelands at the centre of roundabouts and their potential to transform an area. Mohammed claims, if we're guilty of taking it all for granted, the site, a bit of landscape art throws us off every time, makes us consider it all anew. Can this perspective be extended beyond landscape to public art? Is it possible for public art to reform a site? The roundabout artist, John, seems to think so, stating that cultural activity is the number one factor that determines where people want to live. Not affordability, not transport links, cultural activity.
Demolition work has begun on a rundown South London housing estate. The Haygate estate was once home to over 3,000 people.
In 2011, Elephant and Castle, North London, affordability was at the forefront of the conversation. In the case of the Highgate estate, urban regeneration brought gentrification and displacement into the limelight. What is the reality facing the pre-existing residents of these sites? This BBC interview gives us some insight into the disruption caused to people's lives after the demolition and gentrification of an estate built upon social housing.
I lived on the Haygate estate. My leasehold property was taken away from me under the regeneration process.
I was part of a campaign to stop that. We didn't succeed, and everybody who lived on the estate, over 1,000 households, had to leave.
In 2016, the Cameron Conservative government pledged to regenerate areas they deemed as sink estates, deflecting the blame for inadequate social housing and infrastructure onto the residents rather than addressing the slow bleed of public services. The then Prime Minister claimed they would build attractive and safe homes, Prime Minister's Office 2016, reducing the issue of housing to aesthetics and not the wider issue of public services and social equity. Journalist Matt Fish wrote for The Independent that Cameron is instead attacking the supposed conditions in which they live, allowing his rhetoric to pass as benevolent social reform rather than continued ideologically driven undermining of the British welfare state. Fish also referenced Highgate, evidencing that 5 years later, urban regeneration urban regeneration was still masquerading the same public failings which led to the social cleansing of Elephant and Castle, London. So, back to Kings Norton 2025. The three estates are still undergoing a long process of regeneration, potentially destined to a similar fate of Highgate, with the majority of social housing being replaced by private estates. The Birmingham Mail 2021 tells us that the full business case states an objective of the plan, that is, regeneration of an area affected by poor design and unsatisfactory housing, including dated tower blocks which are difficult to manage and have continually been subject to antisocial behaviour. And now I will leave this investigation here with a question for you. Would a commemorative public artwork, potentially set on a roundabout, be adequate retribution for those displaced by the social cleansing of housing estates?